My name is Olivia Hayes, and tonight, as I look out from the 40th floor of my Manhattan office, the city feels almost too small for what I've built. Below me, the streets hum with yellow cabs, neon signs, and the glow of my flagship restaurant, Hayes Table, the crown jewel of a global chain that bears my name. The soft silk of my cream blouse brushes against my skin as I lean on the glass, holding a glass of red wine. I should feel untouchable. And most days I do. But tonight is different. Tonight the past is knocking. My phone buzzes on the polished oak desk behind me. The name flashing on the screen makes my breath hitch. Claire Bennett. Claire, my cousin. The girl who once laughed so hard at my cooking that tears streamed down her face. The girl who told everyone at Thanksgiving that my food tasted like sadness in a casserole dish. I can still hear the echo of their laughter in that crowded kitchen. Now, after years of silence, she's reaching out. The irony isn't lost on me. I swirl the wine in my glass, tasting its dry bite on my tongue. Part of me wants to ignore it, to let her words fade into the static of missed calls. But another part, the wounded, determined part, wants to hear exactly why she's calling. Because if she thinks I'm still that girl who crumbled under laughter, she's about to learn just how wrong she is. I wasn't always Olivia Hayes, the woman who signs million-dollar contracts and oversees restaurants on 3 continents. Once, I was just a small-town girl in Ohio with a dream that felt embarrassingly simple. I wanted to feed people. I can still see that Thanksgiving night in my parents' kitchen. I was 22, fresh out of community college, and so proud of the pumpkin ravioli I'd made from scratch. My hands were raw from kneading dough, my apron dusted with flour. I carried the steaming dish to the table like it was treasure. But before the fork even touched anyone's lips, Claire smirked. God, Olivia, why do you even try? You're not a chef, you're a hobbyist. She stabbed one of the ravioli pieces dramatically, tasted it, then faked a gag. The whole room burst into laughter. My uncle pounding the table, my brother Jacob covering his face, even my parents chuckling nervously. I remember standing there holding the serving spoon, feeling my cheeks burn. My hands shook so badly, I had to set the dish down before I dropped it. Every laugh sliced through me, leaving me smaller and smaller. The only person who didn't laugh was my grandmother, Eleanor Hayes. She reached for my hand under the table, her papery skin warm against mine. Later that night, when the laughter had faded and I was hiding in the garage, she found me. In her wrinkled hands, she pressed something into mine. A wooden spoon, worn smooth from years of stirring soups and sauces. This was mine when I started cooking, she whispered. People mocked me too, Liv. Said it wasn't a real career. But food is love, and love always finds its way. Don't let their laughter decide your worth. I clutched that spoon so tightly, tears dripping onto the wood. That was the moment something shifted inside me. I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. The very next morning, I packed my grandmother's spoon, my savings, barely $600, and left for New York City. They thought I was running away from embarrassment. But really, I was running toward something they could never imagine. New York didn't greet me with open arms. It spat me out, chewed me up, and tested me in every way possible. I rented a shoebox apartment in Queens, the kind where you could touch both walls if you stretched your arms out. My kitchen was barely wide enough for a hot plate and a dented saucepan, but I didn't care. I cooked anyway. Pasta with cheap tomatoes. Stews stretched with water so they'd last 3 days. And late at night, I scribbled recipes in a battered notebook while the radiator hissed like an angry dragon. My first step wasn't glamorous. I started selling box lunches to construction workers on the corner near my building. Chicken sandwiches, hearty chili, sometimes just rice and beans with spice. I'd wake up before dawn, cook until my hands ached, then drag my cooler on wheels down 3 blocks. That's where I met Mr. Rodriguez, a retired chef from Puerto Rico who bought my chili 3 days in a row. One morning, he lingered and said, "You've got something, Mija. Not just food, heart." His words were like oxygen. Soon he started teaching me little tricks, how to balance acid in a sauce, how to make rice fluffy instead of sticky, how to trust my palate. But success didn't come easy. I burned more pots than I could afford to replace. Landlords slammed doors in my face when I asked about renting kitchen space. More than once, I thought about crawling back home. But every time, I pulled out my grandmother's spoon and reminded myself, food is love, and love always finds its way. The first real breakthrough came when I convinced a tiny community center to let me cater their fundraising dinner. I poured everything I had into that night: slow-cooked short ribs, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables drizzled with balsamic. I can still remember watching people go back for seconds, then thirds. At the end of the night, the director hugged me and pressed a check into my hand. It was only $800, but it felt like $1 million. With that money, I applied for a weekend spot at a food market in Brooklyn. That's when things truly started to turn. Lines formed. People posted about my food on Instagram. A local blogger called me the hidden gem of Brooklyn pop-ups. Each weekend, the crowd doubled. Still, I didn't tell my family. When they called, I said I was getting by. I never mentioned the crowds, the sold-out Saturdays, the small but steady stream of profit. A part of me wanted to surprise them. Another part just didn't trust them with my fragile dream. It took me nearly 3 years to save enough to open my first brick-and-mortar restaurant. It was tiny, just 6 tables and a kitchen the size of a walk-in closet, but when we opened the doors, people lined up around the block. That night, as I locked up, hands aching and heart soaring, I whispered into the dark, "This is only the beginning." Success has a funny way of circling back to the people who never believed in you. It was almost 7 years after that humiliating Thanksgiving when my past came walking back into my life. I was in my office above Hayes' table, going through the week's numbers, when my assistant buzzed in. "Olivia, there are some visitors here to see you. They say they're family." Family. The word sat heavy in the air. For a moment, I thought about sending them away. But then I felt the weight of my grandmother's spoon, framed and hanging on my wall, and I knew I wanted them to see. When I stepped out, there they were, Claire, still with that perfect hair and smug tilt of her chin, my brother Jacob, shifting uncomfortably in his too-tight suit, and my parents, looking older, grayer, but still carrying the same cautious smiles. "Olivia," Claire said, her voice dripping with practiced sweetness. "Wow. This place is nice." Nice. The word nearly made me laugh. The lobby alone cost more than her entire house in Ohio. Marble floors, chandeliers glittering like starlight, waiters in crisp black uniforms moving gracefully between guests sipping $300 bottles of wine. The scent of rosemary and butter drifted in from the open kitchen. I watched their eyes dart to the wall of awards behind the host stand. James Beard, Michelin stars, top 50 restaurants in the world. Claire's lips parted, but no sound came out. Jacob finally broke the silence. "So, you work here?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "I don't work here, Jacob. I own it. In fact, I own all of them. New York, Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, and last week, we opened in Paris." The silence that followed was delicious. My mother's hand trembled against her purse strap. My father cleared his throat, as if words might magically appear. Claire's face flushed crimson. "You own them," she finally whispered. "Like the whole chain?" "Yes," I said, meeting her eyes. "Every single one." For a long moment, no one spoke. I could almost hear the clattering of plates from the kitchen, the low hum of conversation from the dining room below. Then Claire let out a laugh, forced, brittle. "Well, that's surprising, considering how your ravioli turned out that Thanksgiving." Her attempt at humor fell flat. My brother shot her a look. My parents shifted uncomfortably. I leaned against the polished railing, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind me like a crown. "You mocked me," I said softly, "but your laughter built this. Every cruel word, every smirk, every time you told me I wasn't good enough, it fueled me. You thought you were breaking me, but you were making me." My father finally spoke, his voice low. "Olivia, we didn't realize." "No," I cut in. "You didn't care to realize. And maybe that's worse." They all stood there, stripped of their old authority. For the first time, I wasn't the girl with trembling hands and burning cheeks. I was Olivia Hayes, CEO, chef, owner of a global empire. I let the silence stretch, savoring the shift in power. They had come expecting pity, maybe money, maybe a job. Instead, they found me, stronger, sharper, untouchable. Claire's voice broke the silence, her tone smaller now. Olivia, I don't even know what to say. I smiled, a calm, steady smile. Then don't. Just listen. They stood in my office like strangers, each of them waiting for me to fill the silence. For once, I wasn't the girl begging for their approval. I was the woman deciding what came next. Jacob cleared his throat. Olivia, look, I know I wasn't always supportive. None of us were. But maybe now, maybe there's a way we can be part of this. His eyes flicked toward the floor-to-ceiling window, toward the city glowing beneath us, as if he was already calculating what my empire could do for him. Claire jumped in quickly. Yes, that's what we were thinking. We could help. Expand. Family working together. She forced a smile, the same condescending one she wore that night in Ohio. But now it trembled. I set my glass of water down on the table, the sound sharp in the stillness. You think you can laugh at someone, tear them down, and then just walk into their success? My mother's voice wavered. Olivia, honey, we just want to make things right. I took a deep breath. My instinct was to slam the door shut on all of them. But I also thought of Grandma Eleanor Spoon, the way she had believed in me when no one else did. She would tell me to lead with both strength and compassion. So I spoke carefully, choosing every word. If you want a place in my life, it comes with conditions. Not business conditions, personal ones. Their eyes widened. Jacob, I said, turning to him. You always mocked me for being a dreamer, while you settled for being safe. If you want any relationship with me, you go back to school. Study something you love. Show me you're capable of building your own life, instead of circling mine. He swallowed hard but nodded slowly. I turned to Claire next. Her face tightened, bracing for impact. Claire, you've spent your whole life tearing others down to feel taller. If you want to be part of my life, you'll stop. No more mockery. No more cruelty disguised as jokes. Support someone else's dream for once. Learn what real strength looks like. Her lips pressed together, but she didn't argue. Finally, I faced my parents. My father's shoulders sagged. My mother's hands twisted the strap of her purse. You laughed when you should have listened. If you want my forgiveness, it starts with honesty. Come to my restaurant tomorrow night. Sit down as guests. Taste my food, not with judgment, but with open hearts. And for once, tell me the truth. The room was heavy with their silence, each of them processing what I'd laid bare. I didn't raise my voice, didn't need to. My power wasn't in anger, it was in choice. I leaned back, my voice steady. Those are my conditions. Not negotiable. If you can't meet them, then you walk away, and I won't lose a minute of sleep. The next night, I stood quietly in the corner of Hayes' table as my family walked in. They looked out of place among the polished wood, the soft jazz, the glittering skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For once, they weren't in control. They were guests in my world. I watched as servers placed dishes in front of them. Roasted duck with blackberry glaze, handmade pasta with truffle cream, molten chocolate cake dusted with sea salt. My staff moved with elegance and precision, the hum of satisfied diners filling the air. At first, my family hesitated, but slowly bites were taken. Chewing, swallowing, silence. Then, something I never thought I'd see. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears as she set her fork down. Olivia, this is beautiful, she whispered. My father nodded, voice low. We were wrong. All those years ago, we were wrong. Jacob looked at me, his face softer than I'd ever seen. I've already signed up for night classes. Business management. I want to build something of my own. And Claire, the cousin who once ridiculed me most, met my eyes, her voice quiet. I'm sorry. Truly. I've spent my life mocking what I didn't understand. But you proved us all wrong. A weight lifted from my chest, one I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Their words didn't erase the pain, but they acknowledged it, and that mattered. Later that night, when the dining room was empty, I walked upstairs to my office. My gaze fell on the framed wooden spoon on the wall. Grandma Eleanor's spoon. The same one she pressed into my hand the night I almost gave up. I touched the glass, whispering softly, "You were right, Grandma. Food is love, and love always finds its way." As the city glowed outside my window, I felt both the ache of the past and the triumph of the present. I wasn't cooking for their approval anymore. I was cooking because it was who I was, who I had always been. And if anyone ever asks me what I do, I'll smile and tell them the truth. They mocked my cooking. Now I own a global restaurant chain.